The muted glow of the antique lamp cast long shadows across the dusty study, illuminating a single framed photograph within a cluttered curio cabinet. It was an unassuming family portrait, captured decades ago, depicting three generations caught in a moment of seemingly idyllic domesticity. A stoic grandfather, a gentle grandmother, and a beaming young daughter framed by a sunlit garden. Most would have glanced at it, perhaps noting the faded colors or the grandmother's warm smile, and moved on. But to an expert eye, one detail would snag, an almost imperceptible anomaly. The grandfather's hand, resting casually on his knee, held something small, dark, and utterly indefinable, tucked just so, as if meant to be overlooked. A subtle, almost defiant glint, a silent whisper of a secret profoundly guarded. This was not just a portrait, it was a veiled confession, a frozen moment holding a truth that would ripple through time. Sarah's fingers danced across the keyboard of her vintage laptop, the soft clatter of familiar rhythm in her bustling city apartment. Bookshelves overflowed, laden with art history tomes, auction catalogs, and dog-eared journals filled with her meticulous sketches of rediscovered masterpieces. She specialized in the narratives woven into family heirlooms, a modern-day art detective untangling provenance and purpose. Her latest commission had arrived with a hint of intrigue. A reclusive family, the Ashworths, in need of a comprehensive appraisal and cataloging of their ancestral collection. The accompanying email was brief, almost terse, but the promise of an untouched estate laden with generations of accumulation was irresistible. She thrived on the thrill of the hunt, the potential to unearth a forgotten treasure or, more often, a forgotten story. Her life was a tapestry of historical threads, each new project a chance to weave herself into another family's legacy. The drive to the Ashworth estate was long, winding through forgotten country roads until a sprawling Gothic revival mansion emerged from behind ancient oaks. Its stone facade, stained with centuries of weather, seemed to sigh with untold histories. Sarah felt an immediate pull, a shiver of anticipation that always accompanied her arrival at such places. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and old money. A heavy oak door, studded with black iron, swung inward to reveal her reception. The Ashworths were, as promised, polite, almost painfully so, but beneath their polished manners lurked an undeniable reserve. The patriarch, Elias Ashworth, the very grandfather from the photograph she'd been sent, dominated the foyer. His eyes, though piercing, seemed to carry the weight of untold years, observing her with a practiced, unsettling detachment. His son David, a nervous man in his 50s, hovered nearby, while his daughter-in-law, Clara, offered fragile smiles. They maintained a respectful distance, their postures betraying a collective unease. When Sarah began to outline her methodical approach, emphasizing the importance of thorough documentation and potential historical significance, their polite masks began to slip. "Oh, it's really nothing of consequence, Miss Davies," Elias interjected, his voice raspy with age, a dismissive wave of his hand accompanying the words. "Just sentimental clutter, you understand. A lifetime of accumulated odds and ends. Nothing of real value, I assure you." David quickly chimed in. "Yes, Father is quite right. We simply want it all tidied up. Cataloged for insurance purposes, perhaps? No need for an extensive, arduous process? We're not expecting any hidden masterpieces, if that's what you're thinking." He gave a strained chuckle, more a gasp than genuine amusement. His gaze darted to his father, then back to Sarah, as if seeking confirmation of a long-held, unspoken understanding between them. Sarah, accustomed to such initial resistance, offered a reassuring smile. "My process is comprehensive by its nature, Mr. Ashworth. Even sentimental value has its own profound importance, and often, what seems like clutter to one generation holds unexpected historical or artistic significance for another." She explained the nuances of her work, The detective work involved in tracing an item's journey through time, hoping to pique their interest, to break through their carefully constructed facade. But their expressions remained stubbornly blank, almost deliberately so. They seemed less interested in the stories their family possessions might tell, and more in having Sarah complete her task with minimal disruption and, crucially, minimal questions. Their guardedness was a palpable texture in the air, a thick, invisible wall she knew she would have to subtly dismantle. The object in the grandfather's hand from that photograph, now burned into her memory, pulsed with an unspoken narrative. It was more than a mere object. It was the key to this family's carefully curated silence. Before we delve deeper into this compelling mystery, a hidden truth encased in a simple portrait, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our thrilling untold stories. Sarah embarked upon the tedious initial phase of her appraisal, a process she knew required meticulous attention even to the most mundane objects. She moved through the Ashworth estate with a professional demeanor, her eyes scanning for anything of intrinsic or historical value. Most of what she encountered, however, validated the family's initial assessment. A collection largely comprised of common family artifacts, pieces laden with sentiment but little monetary worth. There were antique silver trays, slightly tarnished and bearing forgotten monograms, dusty porcelain figurines arranged on dimly lit shelves, and countless photo albums filled with faded images of generations past. Each item, while perhaps holding a personal story, offered no immediate indication of the extraordinary secret she intuitively felt lay hidden within these walls. Despite the apparent ordinariness of the objects, Sarah couldn't shake the pervasive sense of unease that permeated the grand, yet strangely silent, house. A peculiar tension hummed beneath the polite veneer of the Ashworth household, a subtle discord that resonated most strongly around Elias, the patriarch. She observed him often, finding his gaze frequently drawn to a particular framed portrait hanging in the main drawing room. It was the very same portrait that had initially piqued her interest, a depiction of Elias, younger then beside his late wife, and a small smiling daughter. His eyes, in those moments, held a profound, distant sadness, a wistfulness that hinted at unspoken stories. He would stand before it for long stretches, lost in thought, his expression a complex tapestry of grief and something else, something she couldn't quite decipher. This portrait, she realized, was more than just a family memento. It was a focal point of Elias's inner world, perhaps a key to understanding the undercurrents of the estate. As Sarah continued her methodical work, the Ashworth family's initial politeness began to fray, revealing a thinly veiled impatience. David, Elias's son, became the most vocal proponent of this growing discomfort. He would frequently materialize in the room Sarah was working in, his presence an unwelcome intrusion on her focused concentration. "Any luck, Sarah?" he'd ask, his tone of forced casualness that thinly masked his anxiety. "As I said, it's mostly just old family junk, isn't it? Nothing of real consequence." He would then invariably emphasize the collection's presumed lack of monetary value, urging her with increasing frequency to expedite her work. His pronouncements felt less like suggestions and more like thinly veiled commands, his desire for her swift departure palpable. David's anxiety was a constant, almost physical presence in the house. He was often seen pacing, making hushed phone calls, or simply staring out windows, his back rigid. He deflected Sarah's occasional, gentle inquiries about family history with a practiced ease, offering vague generalities or outright changing the subject. It was clear he wanted nothing more than for this entire appraisal process to be over. Sarah, however, was not easily deterred. Her professional curiosity, sharpened by years of uncovering overlooked artistic treasures, was now fully ignited. There was also a growing intuition, a persistent whisper in her mind, telling her that something significant was being withheld, something amiss beneath the surface. She began to subtly push back against David's attempts to rush her. "Mr. Ashworth," she would begin, her voice calm but firm. A comprehensive appraisal, by its very nature, requires a methodical approach. Skipping steps would compromise the integrity of the valuation and my professional reputation. She would then, with polite insistence, request access to all parts of the estate where artifacts might potentially be stored. Her comprehensive appraisal contract, a document she had diligently ensured was robust, became her shield and her weapon. She cited its clauses, referring to her right to unfettered access to all designated collection areas, politely but unequivocally asserting her professional boundaries. This wasn't merely about finding a valuable object for the Ashworths. It was about a deeper truth, a story waiting to be told. The tension in the house, far from intimidating her, only fueled her determination to uncover whatever secret Elias and his family were so desperately trying to keep hidden. Her slow, meticulous process was her way of peeling back the layers, one careful step at a time, convinced that patience would ultimately reveal the extraordinary within the ordinary. Sarah's keen observations, honed by years of studying the subtle nuances of human behavior and artistic deception, quickly zeroed in on Elias. It wasn't the way he spoke or the words he chose. It was the quiet, almost furtive gestures that truly betrayed his inner turmoil. She noticed a particular wooden box, small and elegantly carved, that he seemed to guard with a fierce, almost primal instinct. Whenever he believed himself to be unobserved, his hand would instinctively drift towards it, his fingers tracing the smooth, aged wood with a tenderness that spoke volumes. It was the very box, she realized with a jolt of recognition, that was cradled in his hand in the ambiguous portrait, the one that had first piqued her curiosity and lingered in her thoughts like a persistent whisper. Driven by a professional instinct she had learned to trust implicitly, Sarah attempted a casual inquiry, hoping to gently pry open the door to his guarded world. "That's a beautiful box, Mr. Ashworth," she remarked one afternoon, feigning admiration for its craftsmanship rather than her true fascination with its contents. "Does it hold something special?" The effect was immediate and startling. Elias, who moments before had been lost in a reverie, snapped back to attention, his eyes widening with a flicker of panic. He quickly pulled his hand away, concealing the box with a practiced swiftness that suggested years of discreet practice. Before he could even formulate a reply, David, as if materializing from the shadows, suddenly appeared, his presence a palpable shield between Sarah and his father. His agitation was unmistakable, his brow furrowed with an intensity that bordered on accusation. "Just old sentimental trinkets," David interjected, his voice clipped and dismissive, effectively shutting down any further conversation. "Nothing of any value, certainly not to your appraisal, Sarah." The air grew thick with unspoken tension, reinforcing Sarah's growing conviction that this seemingly ordinary family held secrets far deeper than she had initially imagined. The next few days saw Sarah methodically sifting through stacks of old family photographs, each image a fleeting glimpse into a past that seemed increasingly complex. Most were quaint, forgotten moments, picnics, birthdays, stiffly posed family gatherings. Then, tucked into the back of a leather-bound album, she found it, a brittle yellowed newspaper clipping, its edges frayed with time. The headline, though faded, was still legible: "Local Mystery. The Weaver's Heart Vanishes." The article, dated decades prior, detailed the disappearance of a priceless miniature sculpture, renowned for its intricate craftsmanship and emotional symbolism. It was described as a delicate piece barely fitting into the palm of a hand, depicting interwoven threads of destiny. The very name, "The Weaver's Heart," resonated in Sarah's mind. The description of the sculpture, though vague, sparked a nascent memory, a fleeting image from the portrait. She recalled a peculiar, almost imperceptible protrusion in the background, a slight unevenness beneath the layers of paint that her art historian's eye had subconsciously registered. Could it be? Could this long-lost masterpiece, A subject of local legend somehow be connected to the Ashworths and their guarded secret? The discovery propelled Sarah back to the portrait, her previous observations now imbued with a newfound urgency. She approached the painting with a renewed intensity, her gaze no longer simply appreciative but analytical, dissecting every brushstroke, every shadow. She noted the odd, almost unnatural angle of Elias's hand, clenched just so, as if protectively obscuring something vital. The way the light caught his knuckles, the slight bulge in the fabric of his sleeve, it all suddenly made sense. It wasn't a natural pose, it was a deliberate concealment. She leaned closer, almost pressing her nose against the canvas, studying the textures and the subtle variations in the paint. Her expert eye began to discern faint discrepancies, minor inconsistencies in the pigment and the underlying canvas. She traced the outlines of the figure, the flow of the drapery, and a distinct realization began to form. The painting, though masterfully executed, bore subtle signs of alteration. It was as if layers had been added, or perhaps a section had been repainted with painstaking care to blend seamlessly with the original. The evidence, though circumstantial, was mounting. The wooden box, the newspaper clipping, and now the portrait itself. Each piece, though small and seemingly disparate, was beginning to weave together into a much larger, more captivating narrative than she had ever anticipated. The Ashworth family's quiet resistance wasn't just about privacy, it was about protecting a carefully guarded truth, a truth that seemed inextricably linked to the elusive weaver's heart and the secrets held within the canvas. The mystery was deepening, pulling Sarah further into its intricate web with each passing moment. Sarah, heart pounding with a mixture of professional excitement and personal trepidation, knew she had to press Elias directly. The weight of the wooden box, now firmly linked in her mind to the legendary weaver's heart, and Elias's protective grip in the portrait, demanded clarification. She found him sitting in the sunroom, ostensibly reading a newspaper but clearly lost in thought, the ever-present box resting innocently on the small table beside him. Approaching him gently, she began, "Mr. Ashworth, I've been going through some of the family archives, and I came across this old newspaper clipping." She laid the faded article about the vanished sculpture before him, then gestured subtly toward the wooden box. "And this box, it's quite distinctive. Is there a story behind it, perhaps something connected to the weaver's heart?" Elias's demeanor shifted instantly. His eyes, which had been distant and thoughtful moments before, narrowed with a flicker of suspicion. He picked up the clipping, his gaze sweeping over the familiar words with an almost pained expression, then quickly glanced at the box. "That old thing?" he scoffed, his voice thin and reedy. "Just an antique trinket. And that newspaper story from decades ago? Pure sensationalism, if you ask me. I don't recall any connection whatsoever, just a silly local legend, nothing more." He attempted a dismissive wave of his hand, but Sarah noticed the tremor, the way his knuckles subtly whitened as he tightened his grip on the clipping. It was a practiced denial, too quick, too emphatic. He was feigning confusion, but his unease was a palpable force in the quiet room. Before Sarah could press further, a shadow fell over them. David, Elias's son, stood in the doorway, his expression grim. "Everything all right here, Sarah?" David's tone was sharp, laced with an unwelcome authority. He had an uncanny knack for appearing precisely when sensitive topics arose. Elias, seizing the interruption as an escape, quickly folded the newspaper clipping and tucked it into his pocket, his earlier nonchalance evaporating. David's eyes, cold and scrutinizing, landed on Sarah. "I'm afraid I must insist you stick to the agreed-upon task, Ms. Hayes. This historical digging, it's frankly beyond the scope of your contract. My father is not well, and I find these sorts of inquiries quite upsetting for him." He stepped fully into the room, his presence filling the space with an almost suffocating tension. If you continue to overstep your bounds, I will have no choice but to terminate your services. We hired an appraiser, not a detective." The thinly veiled threat hung in the air, a stark reminder of her precarious position. Sarah felt a surge of frustration, but she held her ground, meeting David's gaze with a steady resolve. She would not be intimidated, not when she was so close to understanding. Feeling increasingly isolated within the grand, silent walls of the Ashworth estate, Sarah knew she needed more concrete evidence, something undeniable. David's aggressive intervention only strengthened her resolve. She decided to shift her focus from direct confrontation to a deeper, more personal excavation of the family's past. During a late-night search of a forgotten storage trunk in the attic, beneath layers of moth-eaten linens and forgotten childhood toys, her fingers brushed against a small, leather-bound volume. It was an old dust-covered diary, its pages brittle with age. The elegant script within quickly identified its owner, Eleanor Ashworth, Elias's late wife. As Sarah read, a different side of the guarded Ashworth family began to emerge. Eleanor's entries, though often poetic and abstract, spoke of a passionate, almost defiant spirit. There were cryptic references to a secret love, a profound connection that transcended the expectations of her social standing. She wrote of a treasure to protect, not a material one, but something deeply intertwined with emotion, loyalty, and a clandestine bond. The words painted a picture of a woman burdened by societal constraints, yet vibrant with an inner world of profound feeling. It was clear that this treasure held immense emotional value for Eleanor, far beyond any monetary worth. The diary entries hinted at a life lived beneath a veneer of convention, a life filled with secrets and a hidden narrative that mirrored the obscured details in the portrait itself. The diary was a revelation, and it fueled Sarah's determination. She retreated to her temporary quarters, the old guest room feeling more like a command center. Using her phone, she began to research the Weaver's heart more extensively, now cross-referencing it with Eleanor Ashworth's life. The early records of the sculpture's disappearance were scarce and contradictory, but a lesser-known detail began to surface in archived art journals and local history archives. Before her marriage into the prominent Ashworth family, Eleanor had been a talented, if somewhat rebellious, young artist. Her chosen medium? Sculpture, specifically delicate, intricate miniatures. She had studied briefly at a prestigious, albeit unconventional art academy in Europe, a period of her life largely glossed over by the Ashworths, her artistic endeavors deemed an unsuitable pursuit for a woman of her standing. The pieces she had created during that era were known for their emotional depth and symbolic complexity, often depicting intertwined fates and hidden vulnerabilities. A wave of understanding washed over Sarah. Eleanor wasn't just a society wife. She was an artist, a creator, a woman with a strong, independent voice muted by expectation. And she had sculpted. Could the Weaver's heart have been her creation? The thought sent a thrill through Sarah. The pieces of the puzzle were no longer just scattered fragments. They were beginning to interlock, forming a coherent narrative of love, art, and a secret meticulously preserved. Elias's protectiveness, Eleanor's cryptic diary, the missing sculpture, and the altered portrait, it all converged beautifully, painting a picture far more intricate and human than a simple appraisal could ever uncover. The true story of the Ashworths, hidden beneath layers of decorum and denial, was finally starting to reveal itself. Sarah knew her investigation was now very personal, far beyond the scope of her initial commission. She was no longer just an appraiser, she was a keeper of secrets, on the cusp of uncovering a truth that had been buried for decades. Sarah paced the antique rug in her makeshift office, Elias's late wife's diary clutched in her hand, the cryptic entries about a secret love and a treasure to protect echoed in her mind, intertwining with the faded newspaper clipping detailing the disappearance of the Weaver's heart. She knew what she had to do, even if it meant directly confronting David, who had become increasingly obstructive. Taking a deep breath, she found him in the study, poring over ledgers with a frown etched on his face. "David, we need to talk," Sarah began, her voice firm but even. She laid the diary and the newspaper article on the polished mahogany desk, pushing them gently towards him. "I've been going through your mother's personal effects, as per my contract. I found this diary. It speaks of a secret love and a treasure to protect. Combined with this article about a stolen sculpture, the weaver's heart, which vanished decades ago, I have to ask, what exactly is your family hiding?" David visibly stiffened, his eyes darting between the diary, the clipping, and Sarah's unflinching gaze. His jaw tightened, and for a moment Sarah thought he might simply dismiss her again, but then a weary sigh escaped him. "A scandal," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. "That's what it is, a buried family scandal." He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his thinning hair, his usual polished demeanor cracking to reveal a deep-seated frustration. "It's a family legend, really. More of a curse, if you ask me. My father, Elias, was involved, or at least suspected, in the disappearance of some valuable art piece years before I was born. A masterpiece, they called it. The Weaver's Heart. Yes, that's what it was. It was a huge embarrassment. Ruined his reputation in certain circles." David then moved to the window, staring out at the manicured gardens, speaking as if to himself. "My mother, Eleanor, she devoted her life to protecting him. From the gossip, from the shame, she always said she helped him hide the treasure, that it was a symbol of their bond, something nobody else could ever understand. But to us it was always a myth, a burden from the past that hung over our family like a shadow. My father never spoke of it, not genuinely. He just clutched his possessions, grew more reclusive. We always assumed the treasure was just some sentimental trinket, or perhaps even just an old love affair that was best forgotten. It never occurred to us it might be the actual stolen sculpture. We were told it was long gone, irrevocably lost." He turned back to Sarah, a flicker of something akin to fear in his eyes. "You're saying, you think my father actually has the Weaver's heart, after all these years?" Sarah nodded slowly. "I believe he does. And I believe your mother, Eleanor, helped him hide it. Not from the world, David, but from anyone who might judge him or exploit it. She used the family portrait." David's brow furrowed in confusion. "The portrait? But it's just a family painting, a memorial to my mother." "It's more than that," Sarah insisted, her voice filled with a quiet certainty. Her mind raced, connecting the dots that David couldn't see, or perhaps didn't want to see. The odd angle of Elias's hand in the painting, the subtle inconsistencies in the paintwork she had observed earlier, the weight of the wooden box. It all clicked into place. The portrait wasn't just a picture. It was a deliberate act of concealment, a carefully crafted secret. She excused herself from the study, leaving a bewildered David behind, and quickly retrieved the specialized UV light she kept tucked away in her appraisal kit. Her hands trembled slightly with anticipation as she returned to the sitting room where the portrait hung. She dimmed the lights, plunging the room into a soft, ethereal gloom, then switched on the UV lamp. The purple-blue glow washed over the canvas, transforming the familiar scene. She focused the light on Elias's hand, where it rested against his chest. At first, nothing. Then, as she adjusted the angle, a faint, almost imperceptible outline began to emerge beneath the top layer of paint. It was translucent, like a ghost of an image, but it was there. An intricate swirling pattern, delicate and small, nestled within the curve of his painted fingers. Her breath hitched. It was undeniably a small sculpture, cradled protectively in his hand, largely obscured by the subsequent brushwork that had been applied with meticulous care to hide it. The telltale signs of overpainting, the subtle variations in pigment, the minute textural differences. They were all suddenly illuminated, shouting their truth under the UV light. The portrait, once a simple family memento, was now revealed as an elaborate, clandestine masterpiece of deception. Eleanor hadn't just helped him hide the weaver's heart. She had immortalized its concealment within their very family history. She had painted it into the portrait, ensuring it would always be with him, a secret only they shared, visible only to those who knew where and how to look. It wasn't just a painting. It was a map, a coded message, a testament to Eleanor's unwavering love and her protective nature. Elias wasn't hiding it from the world or from potential thieves. He was hiding it from his own family's judgment, their greed, their misunderstanding of the true value of what he possessed. The true treasure wasn't the mere object, but the profound story it represented, a story Eleanor herself had intricately woven into the very fabric of their lives. And now, onto the canvas itself. Sarah felt a surge of profound awe, not just for the artistic skill, but for the depth of emotion and secrecy held within that single, seemingly ordinary family portrait. The faint, almost invisible outline beneath the top layer of paint, revealing a small, intricate sculpture cradled in Elias's hand, solidified Sarah's suspicions. The UV light had not only confirmed her growing theory, but laid bare the meticulous deception, the deliberate brushstrokes designed to obscure the weaver's heart. The portrait was indeed a map, a coded message from a past love, and Elias, the stoic patriarch, was its keeper. Armed with this undeniable visual evidence and the poignant entries from Eleanor's diary that spoke of a treasure to protect, Sarah knew she could no longer delay. She found Elias in the sunroom, staring out at the rain-swept garden, a familiar melancholy etched onto his aged features. His hands, though empty, still seemed to cradle an invisible weight. Sarah approached him cautiously, her voice gentle, devoid of the appraiser's usual professional detachment. "Mr. Ashworth," she began, holding up her phone, its screen displaying the UV image of the portrait. "I believe I understand now. And I think Eleanor would want you to know that someone finally does." She spoke softly, her words a balm rather than an accusation. She pointed to the faint glow on the screen, showing the ghostly image of the sculpture within the painted hand. "This, sir, is the weaver's heart, isn't it? Hidden in plain sight, just as Eleanor intended." She then produced the small, leather-bound diary open to a page where Eleanor had written, in flowing script, of a secret love, a treasure woven into the fabric of our lives, safe where only true hearts will see it. Elias turned. His eyes, usually clouded with distant sorrow, now held a flicker of surprise, then profound recognition. He looked from the image on the phone to the diary in her hand, and then back to Sarah, his composure finally cracking. A long, shuddering sigh escaped him, a sound laden with decades of unspoken grief and burden. His shoulders, usually so stiff, sagged. He reached out a trembling hand, not to push her away, but to touch the screen, his calloused finger hovering over the spectral image of the sculpture. "Eleanor, she always was the clever one," he whispered, his voice raspy with emotion, a dam finally breaking under the gentle weight of understanding. He sat down heavily, beckoning Sarah to join him. The storm outside seemed to mirror the tempest within him. "Yes," he confessed, his voice barely audible at first, then gaining strength as the words poured out. A torrent, held back for too long. It was her, all of it. The weaver's heart was Eleanor's creation, a gift for me, a symbol of our true love before the arrangements, before the family expectations took hold. He paused, his gaze drifting to the garden, seeing not the rain, but perhaps a younger Eleanor, her hands deftly shaping clay or metal. We were so young, so foolishly in love. My family, they were old money. She was an artist, bohemian even. They wouldn't have stood for it, he continued, his narrative unfolding like a fragile yellowed scroll. When the sculpture was reported stolen years later, I was a prime suspect. There were rumors, whispers about my involvement, my supposed desperation for funds to escape the life laid out for me. Eleanor, she knew I was innocent, but she also knew the truth. The depth of our connection would only complicate matters, perhaps ruin us both. His eyes glistened with unshed tears, so she helped me hide it. Not from the authorities, not truly, but from the judging eyes of society, from my own family's rigid expectations. She painted it into the portrait of us, a family portrait that was meant to signify my conformity, my acceptance of the Ashworth legacy. But for us, it was a defiant act of love, a permanent, veiled memorial of our bond, a secret only we shared, a promise whispered through art. The portrait, Sarah now understood, was not just a cover-up. It was Eleanor's subversive masterpiece, a public display of hidden devotion. Elias's confession was a raw, unfiltered outpouring of a lifetime of suppressed emotion. He finally rose, his movements slow but deliberate, and walked to a hidden compartment in the fireplace mantel, retrieving the familiar worn wooden box. He placed it gently on the table between them. "This," he said, his voice thick with reverence, "contains more than just the weaver's heart." As he opened the box, its hinges creaking softly like an old memory, Sarah saw it first. Nestled on a bed of faded velvet, the miniature sculpture gleamed, infinitely more exquisite than she had imagined from the description. Its intricate design, the delicate intertwining threads, spoke volumes of Eleanor's talent and the profound symbolism embedded within it. But beside it, carefully preserved, were stacks of aged letters tied with a silken ribbon and a collection of delicate sketches, some clearly Eleanor's preliminary designs for the sculpture itself, others quick portraits, landscapes, and abstract forms. "These are her love letters," Elias explained, his voice thick with emotion, "and her sketchbooks, her true legacy." She was an artist, Sarah, so much more than anyone in this family ever truly acknowledged. She poured her heart into these, into that sculpture. The treasure wasn't just the monetary value of the weaver's heart, though it is priceless in its craftsmanship. The real treasure was our love, her art, her spirit, hidden away from a world that couldn't understand or appreciate its true worth. He picked up one of the sketches, a charcoal rendering of a young man with a familiar, handsome face, undoubtedly a younger Elias. "She trusted me with this, with our story, and I kept her secret, protected her art, our love, just as she protected me." The revelation hung in the air, a poignant testament to a love story far grander and more heartbreaking than any fictional tale. The revelation hung in the air, a poignant testament to a love story far grander and more heartbreaking than any fictional tale. The soft glow from the table lamp illuminated the delicate features of the weaver's heart, and the faded ink of Eleanor's letters, each a silent witness to a life lived intensely, if secretly. Elias sat back, a lifetime's burden finally lifted, his gaze distant, lost in memories. Sarah, deeply moved, felt a profound respect for both Elias and Eleanor, for the strength of their bond and the quiet defiance of their love. Just as she was about to speak, a sudden jarring sound from the doorway shattered the fragile peace of the room. David stood there, his face contorted in a mixture of anger, disbelief, and something akin to betrayal. He must have been listening, lurking in the shadows, absorbing every painful word of his father's confession. His eyes, usually cool and reserved, blazed with a fury Sarah had not witnessed before. "So it's true," he bit out, his voice sharp and laced with venom. He took a step into the room, his presence immediately filling it with tension. "All these years? All this secrecy? For a common thief and his mistress's bauble?" His words were a cruel lash, aimed directly at his father's unguarded heart. He gestured wildly towards the wooden box, his hand trembling slightly. "You let us believe it was just sentiment. Just your eccentric attachment to an old photo. All this time it was a stolen masterpiece, a scandal hidden right under our noses." Elias flinched, visibly recoiling from his son's harsh accusations. The calm that had settled over him moments before evaporated, replaced by a deep, weary sorrow. "David, you don't understand," he began, his voice barely a whisper, filled with a plea for comprehension. But David was beyond listening. He advanced further, his eyes fixed on the sculpture. "Understand? I understand that you've been living a lie for decades. Our family reputation, what little we had left after your indiscretions, was built on a foundation of deceit. And for what? For this?" He snatched one of Eleanor's sketches from the box, crumpling it slightly in his agitated grip. This secret love, it's a disgrace. And this weaver's heart," he spat the name as if it were a curse. "It's a scandal waiting to explode. Do you know what this means financially? What it means to our name if this gets out? It's a liability, a source of endless shame." His anger swelled, overpowering any glimmer of empathy. He saw only the potential ruin, the long-held family secret exposed, and the tangible object he believed to be the root of all their woes. Sarah, who had been observing the painful exchange, decided she could not remain silent. This was more than just a family squabble. It was David's complete misinterpretation of a profound love story. She stepped forward, placing herself subtly between David and his father, her voice calm but firm, cutting through the volatile atmosphere. "David, please, you're missing the point entirely. This isn't about scandal or financial gain. This is about extraordinary artistry, about immense love, and about a woman's incredible strength." She gently retrieved the crumpled sketch from his hand, carefully smoothing it out. "Your mother, Eleanor, was a truly gifted artist. Look at these sketches, David. This wasn't just a bauble she created. It was a testament to her talent, a symbol of her deepest emotions. The intricate details, the profound symbolism within the weaver's heart, speak of a spirit that defied the constraints placed upon her." Sarah then picked up one of the tied bundles of letters. These are her words, her feelings, her private world. These aren't just love letters. They're a window into her soul, into the vibrant, passionate woman she truly was, beyond the expectations of her marriage into this family. She extended the letters and the sketch towards him. "She wasn't an ordinary wife, David. She was an artist, a visionary, a woman who found a way to celebrate her love and her art in the most ingenious, protective way possible. The portrait wasn't a deception, it was a sanctuary. It was her way of safeguarding what was most precious to her, not just her love for your father, but her own creative spirit, which, it seems, was largely unacknowledged and perhaps stifled during her lifetime." Sarah's words were carefully chosen, designed to peel back the layers of David's preconceived notions to appeal to a deeper understanding of his mother. David hesitated, his anger still simmering, but a flicker of curiosity, then a dawning comprehension, began to replace the fury in his eyes. He slowly took the sketch and the letters from Sarah's hand, his fingers tracing the delicate lines of Eleanor's handwriting, the nuanced strokes of her charcoal. He looked at the sketch, then at the actual sculpture, and then back at his father, his expression softening almost imperceptibly. For years he had seen his mother as a noble, somewhat distant figure, subservient to the Ashworth name. Now Sarah's words, coupled with the tangible evidence, painted a radically different picture. He saw not a scandal, but a secret life, a forbidden passion, a hidden talent. He saw his mother as a woman with a profound inner world, fiercely protective of her love and her art. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. His hand trembled not from anger, but from a burgeoning sense of awe and a profound sorrow for the years of misunderstanding. The weight of his parents' unspoken history, its beauty and its pain, settled heavily upon him. His father's decades-long silence, his quiet protectiveness of the box of the portrait, now made heartbreaking sense. She really loved you, didn't she, Father? He whispered, his voice raw, tears finally welling in his eyes, the anger dissipated like smoke, replaced by a deep, aching sadness for the hidden lives his parents had led, and for the parts of his mother he had never truly known. He looked at the sculpture again, not as a stolen artifact, but as the pulsating heart of his parents' extraordinary, secret love story. David stood, eyes wide, absorbing the fragments of his father's confession. The raw emotion, the weight of decades of unspoken truth, pressed down on the room, momentarily silencing his initial outburst. He looked from his father's tear-etched face to Sarah, then to the wooden box on the table, its contents laid bare, the gleaming sculpture, the stacks of letters, the delicate sketches, the anger that had surged through him, fueled by a perceived betrayal, and the shadow of past scandals began to recede, replaced by a profound and unsettling awe. He had envisioned a grand family secret, perhaps a hidden fortune, or a crime, but never this. A love story, intricate and heartbreaking, woven into the very fabric of his family's history. Sarah, sensing the shift in David's rigid posture, stepped forward gently. "David," she began, her voice soft but firm, "this isn't about hidden wealth or public shame. This is about your mother's legacy, her art, and a love that transcended societal expectations." She picked up one of Eleanor's sketchbooks, its pages brittle with age, and carefully opened it to a vibrant, expressive charcoal drawing. "Look at this. This isn't just a wife's pastime. This is the work of a remarkably talented artist. The weaver's heart," she gestured to the sculpture, "is a masterpiece, yes, but it's part of a larger body of work, a testament to her spirit and her passion." She then carefully untied the ribbon on a bundle of letters, offering one to David. "These are her words, David. Her thoughts, her feelings, her dreams. They tell the story of a woman who, despite the constraints placed upon her, found immense joy and expressed profound love through her art. This secret wasn't just your father's, it was hers too. A way to preserve a part of herself that the world, perhaps even her own family, wouldn't have understood." Hesitantly, David took the aged parchment. His fingers brushed over the elegant script. Eleanor's distinctive handwriting, a silent echo from the past. He began to read, his eyes scanning the faded ink, absorbing lines of poetry and declarations of affection, whispers of a life his mother had lived beyond the strictures of her public persona. As he read, the facade of the stern, unapproachable patriarch he knew his father to be crumbled, revealing the young, passionate man depicted in Eleanor's sketches. And the image of his mother, always so composed and distant in his memory, gained a vibrant, fiery dimension he'd never suspected. He saw her not just as the wife of Elias Ashworth, his mother, but as Eleanor, the artist, the lover, the woman who dared to forge her own path in secret. A wave of sorrow washed over him, a deep regret for all the years he had misunderstood, for the truths he had never known, for the vibrant life hidden beneath the surface of his family's carefully constructed existence. His anger, once a raging storm, subsided into a quiet, mournful understanding. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the soft rustle of letters as David continued to read. Elias watched his son, a fragile hope dawning in his eyes. Sarah had provided the bridge, the perspective he had been too guarded, too heartbroken to offer himself. She had allowed David to see his mother through Eleanor's own eyes and words, rather than through the filter of family rumor and societal expectation. Slowly, David lifted his gaze from the letter, his eyes still moist. He looked at his father, a lifetime of unspoken words hanging between them. There was no anger now, only a profound sadness and a burgeoning sense of awe. She was truly extraordinary, wasn't she? David's voice was barely a whisper, filled with a newfound reverence. Elias simply nodded, tears finally tracing paths down his weathered cheeks. The Ashworth family, after days of quiet deliberation, a delicate dance of shared memories and new revelations, made a decision that would forever change their legacy. Guided by David's newfound understanding and Elias's quiet resolve, they chose not to sell The Weaver's Heart or Eleanor's remarkable collection of sketches and letters. Instead, they recognized the true value lay in sharing the story, in honoring Eleanor's hidden genius. A prestigious museum, renowned for its commitment to unsung artists and historical narratives, graciously accepted the offer to display The Weaver's Heart. The miniature sculpture would be the centerpiece of a special exhibit dedicated to Eleanor Ashworth, showcasing her extraordinary artistic talent and the poignant love story it encapsulated. Alongside the sculpture, a curated selection of her sketches and excerpts from her lyrical love letters would be displayed, revealing the depth of her passion and her secret life. A plaque, carefully worded, would explain the true narrative of the family portrait, how it harbored not a scandalous secret, but a testament to enduring love and creativity obscured by time and convention. Sarah completed her appraisal, signing off on a document that now held infinitely more meaning than mere monetary valuation. She left the Ashworth estate not just with a completed assignment, but with a profound and enriched understanding of how art, in its myriad forms, can hold secrets, tell stories, and preserve love across generations. The mansion, once shrouded in an atmosphere of unspoken tension and guarded secrets, now seemed lighter, imbued with a newfound sense of peace. The Ashworth family, connected by their shared truth, began the slow, tender process of healing. David, now a guardian of his mother's legacy, found a new closeness with his father, born of shared grief and mutual respect. Elias, finally unburdened by his lifelong secret, would often sit in the grand drawing room gazing at the family portrait. But now, when his eyes fell upon his own painted hand, the hidden sculpture no longer a silent burden but a celebrated truth, a gentle, contented smile would grace his lips. The art, once a symbol of concealment, had become a beacon of revelation, illuminating a love that had defied all odds. If this deeply moving story touched your heart, igniting a spark of wonder for the hidden narratives that shape our world, then make sure to like this video right now and share it with a friend who appreciates the profound beauty of human connection and artistic expression. And for more captivating tales of hidden truths, unexpected discoveries, and the extraordinary lives of ordinary people, click here to watch our next video, where we unveil another story that will surely leave you spellbound.